This is an On the Ice and Behind the Benches podcast on the Sports for Beginners podcast feed.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Doubleheader baseball calls for doubleheader recap. Blue Jays, Orioles. 4-game series, originally a 3-game series, but that was due to a makeup game. The makeup game and the opener of the 4-game series, all covered right now on Blue Jays game recap. Lights up, let's go. Welcome to Sports for Beginners. This is the show where I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Blue Jays, and take you on a journey through the world of sports. From the fans' perspective, here is your host, Scott McGregor. Let's have some fun. Well, hello everyone. Welcome into Blue Jays game recap, double dose edition of doubleheader baseball on the ice and behind the benches, and of course, sports for beginners. Now, the Blue Jays and the Orioles are currently getting ready for, in just 2 hours' time, game 2 of this doubleheader Tuesday, which was originally a 1-game for Tuesday, but that was made into a doubleheader thanks to an April 11th game that was part of a previous 3-game series against the Orioles with the Blue Jays. And of course, had to be made up July 29th, 2025. So today. That game was just about played. We'll dive into that game before the show is up. But first, we gotta get you caught up to speed with where the Tigers and the Blue Jays were at the end of that 4-game series. And within that, we will talk about the 11-4 opener game of the 4-game series between the Orioles and the Blue Jays, which finaled in favor of the Orioles. So, with that in mind, there will be no American League standings update or National League standings update until game 3 and 4 play out. But what you should know is that going into this competition, the Blue Jays were 63 and 44. The Orioles were 48 and 58. But coming in to this series, the records were currently 63-43 for the Blue Jays, and for the Orioles, 47-58 for the Baltimore Orioles record. Now, let's cut to the chase with the Orioles and the Blue Jays, having known they have now played 2 games out of this 4-game series. The Blue Jays and the Orioles each played teams of their caliber before facing each other. And I'm not going to go too far back into this 3-game series with the Rockies, but I will let you know that the first 2 games of that 3-game series were a Rockies win of 6-5 on Friday, and then a Baltimore Orioles shutdown 18-0 on Saturday, also known as Orange Out Saturday in Oriole Park, Camden Yards being the topic of conversation we will talk about. So the Orioles ended up taking 2 out of 3 in that series with a loss to the Rockies. And they also ended up taking 1 out of 4 against the Cleveland Guardians, winning that game Thursday, the series finale, 4-3. Meanwhile, on the Blue Jays side, Blue Jays fans, if you tune into the latest Jays game recap before you got into this series, the Blue Jays had taken 3 out of 4 against the Tigers, with the Tigers avoiding the sweep to the Blue Jays, taking it in the last game of the series by a final score of 10-4. Now, that was Sunday's final, which was 1 day before yesterday. Sorry, it was the day before yesterday, which was Sunday. Monday was Tuesday. Monday was yesterday. Tuesday is today. But that's beside the point. The Blue Jays took care of business 11-4 Thursday, 6-2 Friday, and 6-1 Saturday, which means they had taken 3 out of the 4 games against the Tigers. Now, the Tigers are currently against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And that is a 3-game series, if I'm not mistaken, which continues today and will wrap up ahead of the trade deadline this Thursday. We'll talk about the trade deadline amidst the final of tonight's ball game at 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time and tomorrow afternoon's ball game, when you can catch the recap at 12:35 p.m. Eastern Time. The rest of the times for those pitching matchups a little later in the program. But now that we've got you up to speed, let's just remind you of where the Tigers and the Blue Jays record are at this point in time, as they each opened up their series once they finished, with the Tigers finishing the Blue Jays series at a record of 62 and 46. Oh, sorry, 61 and 46, I should say, was the final record they had on, I believe it was the 7th, the 27th. Let me see. It was 61 and 46 was the final record for the Detroit Tigers. Since then, they had picked up a victory against the Diamondbacks after the Diamondbacks got shut out by the Pirates 6-0 on the 27th, which was Sunday. Now, the D-backs heading into this game, well, their record pretty much speaks for itself, being shut out 6-0 over the Pirates on Sunday. It was 51-55, and heading into Tuesday, the record with the loss to the Tigers was, well, 51-56. The Tigers' record of losses still 46, and 62 wins now for the Tigers. The Blue Jays' record heading into this doubleheader, 63-44, and the Orioles' record, 48-58, with the victory against the Blue Jays in Game 1 of this doubleheader 4-game series double dose. We will talk about Game 1, and we will get to Game 2 coming up next. But first, let's take a timeout on the ice and behind the benches and change sides on Sports for Beginners to talk all things Tigers, I should say Orioles, and Blue Jays. We will briefly touch on the Tiger series if there's time before the next break. But Game 1 between the Orioles and the Blue Jays, that breakdown next. Looking for a sports podcast that covers sports weekly as well as gets you set up for the day? Check out Weekly in Sports with me, Scott McGregor. We give some shout-outs of the week to podcasts like this one and those who do them. Discuss the Blue Jays, Bills, Raptors, and more. To learn more, check out the Sports for Beginners Facebook page. Search Sports for Beginners.
I wonder if I could make it. It's almost getting to 8:00 p.m., and I am still a few more steps away from home to get to my computer to listen to CNT Radio's Cosmopolitan Culture Club. The best of the best music from around the world. Can't wait! I think I made it! CNT Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time.
Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches. The Blue Jays and the Baltimore Orioles. It's the Battle of the Birds, 4-game series, originally a 3-game series, just like the 3-game series back in April. Unfortunately, it would be known as a 4-game series, which would be a 7-game road trip for the Blue Jays, with 4 against the Tigers, and of course, 4 against the Baltimore Orioles. That tallies up to a 7-game road trip. And of course, here we go with Game 1. of the Battle of the Birds series. The pitching matchups, of course. Chris Bassett on the hill against Charlie Martin, I believe. Sorry, Corbin Martin. Who was the actual pitching matchup? Let's just go back here. Let's see if we can figure out who that matchup was for John Schneider to take on Tony. Tony, of course, his last name begins with a letter M. I can't say its name, but I'll try to say it. Oh, sorry, it was Zach Eflin versus Chris Bassett. Of course, Zach Eflin did not get the win, but Bassett stayed in and got the L. Tony Mansolino is the manager of the Baltimore Orioles. I apologize, Tony, if I could not say that name right. And I apologize in advance if I don't get any of the people's names right. Zach Eflin against Chris Bassett for this matchup. Of course, Zach Eflin not able to finish the game, but that's besides the point. He would get a no decision, but it would be Corbin Martin who would help the Orioles and Zach Eflin to an 11-4 victory over the Blue Jays and keep that win streak for the Orioles. As we mentioned, they took 2 out of 3 against the Rockies. It would take the 18-0 and 5-1 victory against the Rockies. Win streak up a number. And now they've taken a victory in the doubleheader. We'll get to the doubleheader momentarily. Folks, we will get there. But here we go. Let's take a look at the score line here for game number 1. Here we go. The Blue Jays would see Corbin Martin. They would also see Zach Eflin, the original starter for Chris Bassett. We'll talk about their pitching lines momentarily. But in a game where the Blue Jays caused 1 error on 11 hits and 4 runs, the Orioles tallied 11 runs, 16 hits, and no errors committed by them in this ball game. So they came out with the game plan against the Blue Jays. And remember, we're talking about a team that is, quote unquote, in behind the Blue Jays. Like, they are dead last in the American League East. But for how long will the Blue Jays see the Orioles in dead last? Right now, they have taken game 1 of this series, and they have also taken, as of today's final at 12:35, they've taken game 1 of this doubleheader, game 2 of the series. So how long before we start to panic on the Orioles, who are currently dead last in the American League East? Well, we'll just have to wait and find out what the 6:35 game tonight, the second of the doubleheader, and of course the 12:35 afternoon game Wednesday, tomorrow, has to say about that. I certainly hope you'll join us for it. Once again, the winning pitcher is Corbin Martin. His record 1-0. That's his first ever win with the Orioles. Chris Bassett's record goes from 11 wins to 5 losses, which was originally
11-6 with 11 wins and 6 losses. They were hoping to get it to 12-6, but not the case last night. All right. So we've got a lot to talk about and a lot to get to. For this reason, we won't get into Monday's scoreboard, but we'll tap on just the American League East and the National League East is division rivals that were in play on Monday, which of course was last night. The beginning of a 4-game set with the Baltimore Orioles, titled, as you can see behind me, I'm the center of it, but as you can see behind me, it says the Battle of the Birds, which is the tagline for this series. And every series, the Blue Jays and the Orioles, I'm thinking of football. Thomas, focus. Take the field. Anyways, that was game 1. Game 2 took place in part of a game 1 to now game 2 doubleheader, which of course is just about an hour away. By the time you're listening to it, it'll be about an hour or so away from throwing game 2's first pitch. That resulted in another Blue Jays loss, Blue Jays fans. But we don't want to talk about the losses. We want to talk about the wins. Will they pick up a win tonight and Wednesday afternoon? Who knows? We'll have it for you on the ice and behind the benches, and of course, Sports for Beginners, as soon as Wednesday's game goes final. But now that that's out of the way, let's dive in to our scoring. And how do you go about scoring? Well, this is how we will transition every piece of Game 1's breakdown. And this is still Game 1's breakdown, so we're getting into the Game 1 breakdown. And of course, everyone's probably wondering, so how did the Blue Jays, if you weren't watching the game, how did the Blue Jays lose 11-4? Well, we start things off in the bottom of the second for the Baltimore Orioles, and it's Cedric Mullins getting things started. He has 14 homers on the season. This is number 15. Ryan O'Hearn and him score. It's a 2-run shot. Baltimore leads by 2 runs, 2-0 over the Blue Jays. Later in the inning, Kobe Mayo has 2 home runs of himself. And this one, pretty much no doubter as always. It is his 3rd home run of the season, a solo shot. The Baltimore Orioles go into the top of the 3rd, up by 3. It's 3-run lead for the Orioles over the Blue Jays, who still have yet to get a run. Top of the 3rd inning, speaking of top of the 3rd inning, and Nathan Lukes and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who each, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has 14 home runs, just like Cedric Mullins, and Nathan Lukes, just like Kobe Mayo, but a little bit the other way around. He has 7 home runs already. He and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. jump the Orioles to tie this ball game at 3 runs apiece, with the first run coming off of the 8th homer of the season for Nathan Lukes, a fly ball to right center field. Blue Jays are on the board and push the Orioles lead to now just 2-run lead. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on the plate. He'll score George Springer, who we'll talk about George Springer a little later, perhaps before we get into Game 2's breakdown. He homers for his 15th homer of the season. As MLB put it, Vladdy goes yard. And Vladdy did go yard. So Vladimir Guerrero Jr. goes yard. Nathan Lukes goes yard. And that's the 15th homer of the season for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., just like Cedric Mullins in last night's ball game. So Kobe, Cedric, Nathan, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. have this ball game at 3 runs Baltimore, 3 runs Blue Jays. Bottom of the 3rd inning, Adley Rutschman at the plate. He has 9 doubles already on the season. This is number 10. On a sharp fly ball to center field, Jordan Westberg scores, but Gunnar Henderson also scores. And now the Blue Jays are back down by a 2-run lead. It's 5-3. Orioles over Blue Jays. Raymond Lorano singles on a ground ball to keep things going. I hope I'm saying that right. I'll just go with R. Lorano, who gets the ground ball single. And wouldn't you know it, the Blue Jays are down by 3 runs now. It's 6-3, Baltimore over the Blue Jays. Top of the 4th inning. The lead goes back to a 2-run lead as the Blue Jays, Will Wagner lines out to Jackson Holliday. Ernie Clement would score, and the Blue Jays would see a 3-run lead get cut back in half to a 2-run lead for the Baltimore Orioles. It's now Blue Jays 4, Orioles 6. Bottom of the 5th inning, we go. And the Orioles tag on more runs with Ryan O'Hearn doubling for his 15th of the season on a sharp line drive to Addison Barger. Adley Rutschman scores. And the Blue Jays have seen the lead go back to 2 runs to now 3 runs. It's 4-7. Baltimore still in the lead, with a 3-run lead, 7-4. Later in the inning, R. Lorano, I'll just go with RL for short if I can't say the person's name right, and apologetic in advance if I can't say it right. Ryan O'Hearn scores after he doubles. off a home run off of RL, which is the 15th home run of the season for him. Raymond L, if I'm saying that right. I'll just go with RL for short. And the Blue Jays have seen it go up to 4 runs now for the Baltimore Orioles. It's 9-4. I believe that makes sense, with the double putting it back to just 1 run scoring. I believe that makes sense. It was a pair of runs, 4-7. I believe that makes sense. Now it's 9-4 with Ryan O'Hearn scoring. A 2-run shot. The Orioles have a 9-4 lead. The inning would continue until a ground out for the second out would score Cedric Mullins III, and Colton Cowser would get himself a score. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on the play from Tommy Nance to try and get Colton Cowser out, or at least Cedric Mullins, who would go to third base. It is now 10-4. The Blue Jays are down big at this point in time, as it's now a 6-run lead for the Baltimore Orioles. Bottom 7. Colton Cowser. We talked about him already. He was a part of the ground out. Well, he's got 8 homers on the season, and now he's got 9 homers on the season going into Tuesday's matchup, with a fly ball to center field, and it is absolutely no doubt about it gone. A 7-run lead for the Orioles breaks the Blue Jays' winning streak, of which was broken by the Tigers in Game 4 of the 4-game series in Comerica Park. And with that being said, the Blue Jays would see their losing streak go to 2, and now 3, heading into the doubleheader, is second and final game of this originally 3-game series, which had it stayed at 3 games, this would ultimately mean that if we were talking about getting ready for Wednesday, that the Blue Jays would have to avoid a sweep from the Orioles and try to take it 2 out of 3, with the Orioles taking 2 out of 3 as well. But it is a 4-game series. So maybe you just want to split it 2 out of 4, 2 out of 4. Two out of four for the Baltimore Orioles, and 2 out of 4 for the Blue Jays. Now, there ain't many games left, Blue Jay fans, and there ain't many games left, Oriole fans. But before we take our next time out and get ready for Game 2 of this doubleheader, let alone Game 3 of this series, we have to talk about Game two of this series and game one of the doubleheader, which we'll talk about coming up on the other side. But before we get there, let's get you the players of this game that was at 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:35 p.m. Central Time, 4:35 p.m. Mountain Time, and 3:35 p.m. Pacific, which also threw the first pitch at 6:35, I should say 6:36 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:36 p.m. Central, and of course 4:36 p.m. Mountain and 3:36 p.m. Pacific at Oriole Park, Camden Yards. Now, Oriole Park has one more game on the slate with the Baltimore Orioles and the Blue Jays, and that, of course, is Wednesday. Before we get to wrapping up game one, let's take a look at your team comparison that the Blue Jays and the Orioles saw an 11-4 victory for the Orioles. It is all Baltimore Orioles on the top performers, with Adley Rutschman, 3 for 5 for him. Kobe Mayo with the 3 for 4 start, including a homer, 2 RBIs, and a run. He also takes the player of the game. And Cedric Mullins, homer, double, walk, 2 RBIs, and a run, of course. Driven in. Now, we'll talk about this on the other side just to wrap up game one, but it is noted that Springer did leave the game in the ninth after being hit by a pitch on the back of the helmet. Will he be in the afternoon game, or I should say the nightcap game of the doubleheader, which would be a 3-game series if it was originally a 3-game series? It is a 4-game series, which means it wraps up on Wednesday, one day before the trade deadline, which of course is this Thursday. We'll talk about that a little later on the other side. The Orioles, however, compared to the Blue Jays' 4 runs, score 11 runs on 16 hits. They had 4 homers to the Blue Jays' 2 homers, touched base 32 times, left 6 men on base, and did not commit a single error, but also did not commit a stolen base. The Blue Jays may have touched base 19 times, but they left 9 men on, committed 1 error, hit 2 homers on the 11 hits they had, and 4 runs. All right, we're going to dive right in and wrap up game one into game two of this double dose in a moment. But before we get there, time for another break and time for another word from each of our separate stations on Sports for Beginners and on the ice and behind the benches. Game two, the pitching matchup. Who won? Who lost? Otherwise known as game one of a doubleheader Tuesday. And the final game of this double dose recap, that breakdown, coming up when we continue on Blue Jays game recap. But first, when we come back, we give you our thoughts on game one, and we look at the pitching line for both Zach Eflin and Chris Bassett. That is next.
Looking for a sports podcast that covers sports weekly as well as gets you set up for the day? Check out Weekly in Sports with me, Scott McGregor. We give some shout-outs of the week to podcasts like this one and those who do them. Discuss the Blue Jays, Bills, Raptors, and more. To learn more, check out the Sports for Beginners Facebook page. Search Sports for Beginners.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Welcome back, everybody, in the Blue Jays game recap on the ice and behind the benches, and of course, Sports for Beginners. I am your host, Thomas McGregor. Now, I didn't introduce myself early in the game because we have a lot to get to. And in just an hour, 52 minutes away from first pitch of game number 3 in this 4-game series, game 2 of this doubleheader, Tuesday, the Blue Jays will send Eric Lauer to the mound of Oriole Park in Camden Yards, and he'll likely face a right-hander in Brendan Young, number 63, for the Baltimore Orioles. He was recently called up from the minor leagues. At least that's what we're being told earlier this afternoon during that ball game. That game scheduled to play first pitch at the same time as Monday night's game at 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:35 p.m. Mountain Time, 3:35 p.m. Pacific, and 5:35 p.m. Central. The Blue Jays are in action tomorrow with the Orioles to wrap up that series. It will be Jose Barrios taking on, who are the Orioles putting out for their, who are they putting out? Oh yes, it is Dean Kay getting the series finale. First pitch is 12:35 p.m. Eastern Time, and I believe that will be an 11:35 a.m. in the morning start on the Central Coast. I could be wrong. More about those games pending the final piece of the show. We've talked about game 1 of this 4-game series, originally a 3-game series, but we didn't quite wrap it up. So let's wrap it up quick and then get you into game 2, game 1 of this doubleheader, but game 2 of the 4-game series, which played out at 12:35 p.m. Eastern Time, and of course 11:35 a.m. Central Time. Yes, I believe that's when it played out. The matchups, of course, for that was Easton Lucas getting the start against, who was it? Who was it against? Let's just double check here. Oh, yes, Morton was, I believe, the starter for game 2 of this series. So he was the starter for game 2 of the series. The Blue Jays have seen 2 games with the Orioles, and here comes the third one in just about an hour's time, with the first pitch at 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:35 p.m. Central Time. So let's just get you all caught up. Once again, the final score of game 1 was 11-4 in favor of the Baltimore Orioles. Game 2 was Charlie Morton against Easton Lucas, who got the call to start for the Toronto Blue Jays. That game, final score was 16, I believe, Baltimore Orioles to 4 Blue Jays. The Blue Jays may be at the top of the American League right now, but they are trending in deep waters that if they lose, their lead could be really, really cut. And like I said, when we were getting ready for the Tigers series, just because you took out 2 games in a 3-game series against the Yankees, that lead that you have on the Yankees could easily drop when the vibes are popping. I'll get back to what Michael Kay said just before we wrap up game 1. Be happy that you're winning these games right now. Be happy, Blue Jays fans, that we're winning these games right now. Be happy that we're on as good of a run as we've been on. But don't get comfortable and expect that the Blue Jays will find a way to not only win ball games, but also find ways to get back to losing ball games. That was from Michael Kay when the Blue Jays swept the Yankees in 4 games. He was saying that he was complimenting the Blue Jays because the pedagogisms that he was talking about indicate the Blue Jays should not have a good record as they have right now. Could that be the case? Possibly. Maybe. I don't know. All right. We'll talk more about Michael Kay and I'm sure the Yankees somewhere down the road. But I just thought I'd bring that in because I like what he was saying there, and it's true. The Blue Jays have now lost 2 games to the Orioles, and here comes another one at 6:35 Eastern Time, 5:35 p.m. Central Time. Here comes another one. In just one day. Then you've got an afternoon game on Wednesday before the trade deadline. Thursday. So there's a lot that's going on right now in just one day. There's a lot that's going on in one day. The winning pitcher, once again, is Corbin Martin. His record 1-0. Chris Bassett's record 11-5. Now, we've brought over the scoring. We've talked about the player of the game, the top performers, and whatnot. But let's get into how Zach Eflin and the Blue Jays pitcher Chris Bassett did. Even though the team of Chris Bassett, the Blue Jays, lost this game, let's see how they did. Chris Bassett just goes 2 innings and 1/3, allowing 6 runs, 6 earned runs, 7 hits, 4 strikeouts for him, 2 homers, and he walked one of the Oriole batters. For Zach Eflin, he goes 4 1/3, allowing 8 hits from the Blue Jays, striking out 3, giving up 4 runs, all of them earned, 2 homers, one of those 4 runs off the Blue Jays hitters. He and Bassett each walked 1 Oriole and 1 Blue Jay. So 1 Oriole and 1 Blue Jay was walked by both starting pitchers. Mason Fluharty, if I'm saying that right. Fluharty, I should say. Mason Fluharty, I should say. I'll go with Mason F. He goes an inning and 2/3, giving up just 2 hits, striking out 1 batter, no damage. Corbin Martin strikes out 4 Blue Jays, gives up 1 hit, and he goes an inning and 2/3. So he pitches 1 inning, but also goes 2/3 of another inning. Would he have gone 2 complete innings? Probably. But he goes 1 2/3. Speaking of going 1 2/3, Tommy Nance came out after Brandon Little just went 1 inning, and I don't mean a complete inning. He faced 1 batter and that was it. So he went 1/3 of an inning, allowed 4 hits, 4 runs, 4 of those earned, 1 of them a homer, struck out a batter, and he walked an Oriole as well. The winning pitcher, of course, is Corbin Martin. Losing pitcher is Chris Bassett. The records, as you see, when we talked about it earlier, 11-5 for Chris Bassett. Originally 11-6, is now 11-5. Corbin Martin, his first record was 0-0 heading into this game Monday with no decision after no decision. It is now 1-0, which means this is his first game he's won with the Orioles. And it's also his first game that the Orioles haven't lost with him on the mound. Kind of a Max Scherzer vibe, right? Well, speaking of that, now that we've gotten Chris Bassett's match out of the way, let's dive into what the records were going into game 1 of this doubleheader, which of course, the only game that has gone final right now today, in a 16-4 victory for the Orioles and the Blue Jays, in which the Blue Jays, if this was a 3-game series, would be awaiting a chance to avoid the brooms of the Baltimore Orioles. It is a 4-game series set, which wraps up tomorrow, Wednesday, ahead of the trade deadline at 12:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:35 a.m. Central Time, if I have those times right. It will be Jose Berrios on the hill against Dean Kay. That is the matchup for the series finale. For right now, we're getting you ready and caught up to speed with Game 2's breakdown as we'll be preparing you for Eric Lauer and Brendan Young taking the hill against the Toronto Blue Jays hitters and the Baltimore Orioles hitters. For the Blue Jays on the mound, it's Eric Lauer. For the Orioles, it's Brendan Young. They'll be taking on the Blue Jay hitters, Brendan Young, and Eric Lauer will be taking on the Baltimore Orioles pitchers. I should say hitters. But that's coming up in about a matter of moments from now, just an hour 52 minutes ago. And now only an hour and 37 minutes before we have Game 2 of this doubleheader, Game 3 of this 4-game series. Game 3 and 4 will be following the conclusion of Game 4 on Wednesday ahead of the trade deadline. If the Tigers and the Orioles series is not out by Thursday, which is the trade deadline date, expect them ahead of 3 games against the Kansas City Royals on both on the ice and behind the benches and sports for beginners. Hopefully that is not the case, but if that is indeed the case, you'll have them to get prepared for the Royals and the Blue Jays for Blue Jay fans and whoever the Orioles are playing after the trade deadline when we hit August 1st, 2025. All right, enough gabbing about that. Let's bring out Easton Lucas versus Charlie Morton, whose current records in Game 2 of this series ahead of the matchups were what they were. Now the records have changed, I believe, since the game had gone final. Easton Lucas was 3 for 2 in his record. 3-2 was his record. He had lost 2 games. Now he has lost 3 games and won 3 games, so his record is 3-3. Charlie Morton has lost 8 games. His record was 6-8. Now it is 7-8. With the victory over the Blue Jays in Game 1 of this doubleheader, Game 2 of this 4-game series, in which the Blue Jays see the Orioles tack on, as our score line for Game 2 breakdown says, really early. 2 runs for the Orioles in the first half of the first inning, their half of the inning. In the bottom of the third, they tack on 2 more runs. Blue Jays obviously pick up 1 run, but the Blue Jays would see the Orioles add to their 2-0 lead, which would now become, at the time before the 2 runs scored, a 2-1 ball game. The Blue Jays will be down 1 run. With the scoring of the 2 runs for the Orioles in the bottom of the third, that would be a 3-run ball game, with it being 4-1 over the Blue Jays. But with 2 runs, this would be really interesting for the Blue Jays and the, of course, Baltimore Orioles, knowing now it is 3-4 after the fourth inning. Big inning in the sixth, 6 runs come across the plate for the Orioles. Big inning for them in the seventh as well. They come across 4 runs. They're already up big in this one. And then it's the 8th inning and the end of that ball game where the Orioles score 2 runs in the 8th and the Blue Jays just score 1 run. Leaving our final score with the Blue Jays 4 runs, 11 hits, no errors committed in this ball game. The Orioles commit 1 error in this ball game, their first of this series in Oriole Park. 19 hits, 16 runs. They do pick up the win, but some may say they cost themselves the game with an error. Now, no matter what had happened, the game stays as called. The Orioles do win it this afternoon, 16 to 4 is the final score for the Baltimore Orioles in game 1 of this series. Doubleheader, game 2 of this series of 4 games, with 3 playing out in just about a few hours from now. I should say, maybe 1 hour and 60 minutes. I should say, an hour and 60 minutes from now. It is a 6:35 p.m. start. It is currently 5:03 p.m. right now on the East Coast. That means it is currently 4:03 p.m. right now on the Central Coast, if I'm getting it right. And that is, of course, now 5:04 p.m. Eastern, 5:04 p.m. Central. As we're talking about that, let's not continue to get ourselves caught up. We have a game to break down. We will break down both of these games in full in our last time out. But we did mention we get there. The player of the game and the top performers coming up for this series as well. On the other side, 16 runs for the Blue Jays to see from the Orioles, 19 hits, 11 hits from the Blue Jays, 19 hits from the Orioles, 4 homers from the Baltimore Orioles, 36 times they had touched base. They left 9 men on base, committed 1 error. The Blue Jays did not commit an error, but left 8 men on base, touched base 18 times this afternoon. And they did score 2 homers, but they also had 11 hits and 4 runs. All right, top performers in the player of the game coming up on the other side. But first, getting into our finish line of Game 2's breakdown. There is a lot to talk about and a lot to get to, as the remaining games, besides the Blue Jays' second game of the doubleheader and Game 3 of the 4-game series to come up. The series thoughts, in a nutshell, the final pieces of Game 1 and Game 2, which is our thoughts on both Game 1 and Game 2. Coming up when we continue on Blue Jays game recap. On the ice and behind the benches, it is 5:06 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:06 p.m. Central Time, I do believe. Back with more on Sports for Beginners and On the Ice and Behind the Benches. Game 2 and Game 1 of a 4-game series have been covered. What are our thoughts on the series so far? And what can we expect in Game 3? That series preview and the times that you can look out for the game. Next.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for the Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for the Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Looking for conversations on books and more, as well as tutorials on using your favorite devices and applications? You've come to the right place. Join us weekly on Spicy Techie, where Ali and Sienna provide insightful conversations, as well as useful tips and tricks to help you along on your technological journey. To learn more, tune into the show and like the Spicy Techie Facebook page. Search for Spicy Techie.
Blue Jays and the Orioles are getting ready for the final piece of this entire doubleheader of action. We've covered Game 1 and Game 2 of this 4-game series, and we're going to get you ready for Game 3 and Game 4 of this 4-game series just about minutes from now. But before we do, we're just about 1 hour and 22 minutes before they throw first pitch again in Oriole Park at Camden Yards. So while both teams get ready to prepare for that matchup, just a quick reminder of who the pitching matchups are. It is Eric Lauer and Brendan Young. We'll reveal those records of where both teams' pitchers are at in just about minutes from now. But before we get there, let's quickly wrap up the first of the 2 games in the 4-game series. In a nutshell, of course, Bassett loses to Corbin Martin. His record 1-0, Chris Bassett's record 11-5. Corbin Martin picks up his first ever victory with the Orioles. That leads it to a 1-0 record and takes the Orioles into the doubleheader at a record 48-58, while the Blue Jays into the first of the doubleheader 63-44. And then coming into Game 2 of this doubleheader, the record is 63-45 for the Blue Jays and 49-58 for the Baltimore Orioles. Once again, that's 49-58 for the Baltimore Orioles. No $ needed. We are getting set for that series, which is coming up in the doubleheader note about an hour or so from now. It's Eric Lauer and Brendan Young on the hill for the final match of Tuesday doubleheader. And of course, they'll wrap it up tomorrow, Wednesday afternoon, against the Orioles and the Blue Jays. The Orioles, of course, are against the Blue Jays, but they'll wrap it up on Wednesday afternoon, weather permitting. Now, I mentioned that there would be no American League standings update and there would be no National League standings update. But let's talk about what transpired in the 11-4 loss for the Blue Jays over the Baltimore Orioles. As we all know that George Springer left the game with a foul ball off of a helmet hit by a pitch. He would leave the game. Now, reports did come in during this afternoon's game saying that after getting x-rays or what it was that they were doing with George, it seems like George had dodged a bullet. But if you look at the highlight and you watch it over and over again, not for our enjoyment, obviously, but just to figure out where it hit, the pitch was a 96 miles per hour pitch, and it looks like it was a curveball. Maybe it was a fastball. Keegan Mavison has the report that we'll read here as it got updated, I'm sure, throughout the game. He immediately dropped to the ground, he goes on to say about George Springer. John Schneider bolted from the dugout the moment it happened, soon followed by members of the Blue Jays training staff. Springer laid face down on the ground over a minute before getting to his feet and walking off the field under his own power with the staff and, of course, John Schneider. Replay revealed that they did check it out, and after reviewing the play, it appeared to show the ball hitting Springer in his left ear flap, which led to the loud sound in the moment that silenced the crowd. And yes, I was right. It was a 96 mile per hour pitch from Strode, who was pitching at the time in the 9th inning. It ran up and in on George Springer. It was a sudden and jarring moment. Schneider, of course, was completely concerned after the game, speaking in front of the camera, but shared that Springer had been alert the entire time and was speaking with the staff from the moment they got out to him. He said during the 11-4 loss post-game that George Springer was doing all right, saying he's doing all right. It kind of got him in the shoulder, then the helmet. And thankfully, he was able to turn a little bit too. I just had the chance to talk with him. He is with a doctor right now getting evaluated. Now, of course, he was not in the lineup for this afternoon's game in the doubleheader. However, George Springer, when approached by the ball club in the clubhouse, was saying, "I'm feeling better," quote, "feeling better." but he would not be in the lineup. And that's about all we get. It is a scary moment indeed, Keegan Mavison. I do believe that's a great touch on there. It is definitely a scary moment, especially when you have a guy like George Springer or a guy like Joey Votto, any of those guys who could be coming up on their retirement seasons. Kevin Kiermaier, there's so many people to talk about. If you look at people like those guys, they'll prove they still have it in them. But taking a hit like that, I was saying to host of Sports for Beginners when finding out this information, probably minutes after the game, that I thought George was probably one injury away. And when I say one injury away, I don't mean this to be negative. I mean this to be like kind of the reality of maybe it's time to hang up your clubs, your bats, your gloves, because you might not be able to finish the season strong. Now, George Springer, as good of a competitor as he is, I was saying to the host of Sports Beginners that I thought this was probably one of the injuries that was calling the curtain for George Springer to finish his baseball career. Because we've seen injuries where things like that do happen. And over the course of a 162 game season, that's something you're trying to avoid throughout most of the 162 games. You're trying to avoid those type of injuries. Now, during the broadcast in game one of this doubleheader, it was made clear that George had probably dodged a bullet. Would he play in game two? I think that's kind of a risk for George Springer. But I get it. You gave him the day off in game one of the doubleheader, game two of the 4-game series. And now here is game two of the doubleheader, game three of a 4-game series. Maybe there is some fight left in George. I don't really see that happening. Again, as it has been said, it is definitely a scary moment. But Springer has one of the faces of the Blue Jays, a key veteran in the middle of a resurgent season. His style of play this season, particularly on the base, has quickly become a core piece of the Blue Jays' identity. He's been Toronto's most pleasant surprise in a season full of them. That's the worst part about baseball for any side. When a pitch gets thrown that high, Schneider said. So Schneider had a lot of quotes, and I'm just going to use this one last quote that Keegan Mapson has in the article. I do hope you guys check it out if you haven't already checked it out. He says, you don't think about baseball, you think about the human. It's scary, it happens, and of course, it always sucks when those scary moments happen. And that couldn't be anywhere farther from the truth. All right, so what do you guys think about George Springer? Should he play game two at this doubleheader between the Baltimore Orioles, game three of a 4-game series? Should the Blue Jays give him the entire Tuesday off and get ready for Wednesday? Or should they play him and hope that he doesn't have to use the field? Like, he doesn't have to play in right, he doesn't have to play in center, he doesn't have to play in left, and he doesn't have to play as catcher or even first base, second base, shortstop, or third base in this lineup. Let me know what you guys think. All in all, this series seems to be one of those repeated games. If you look at game one from the Tigers series and you look at it from the Orioles series, it seems as if the Blue Jays were hoping they didn't have to have a game where they were coming back and the Orioles said, no, you did it to the Tigers, we'll do it to you. We'll score 11 runs and try to make you come back from 11-4. In game 2, game 1 of this doubleheader, it seemed like that was not the case. Because the Orioles tagged on 16 runs. The Blue Jays, they tagged on just 4 runs. Which, if you look at it from the series, 4 runs last night, 4 runs this afternoon, and yet you still lost. You've only added, if you put 4 runs from last night and you put 4 runs from early this afternoon, in this series, you've had a total of 8 runs so far going into the doubleheader. If you put the 11 runs scored by the Baltimore Orioles plus the runs that they scored in this afternoon's ball game, 16, you are down big, 27 runs already in this series for the Baltimore Orioles. Blue Jays are going to have to think really, really tough about the nightcap of this game and try to figure out how they can end a winning streak from the Baltimore Orioles from growing any larger. And I feel like saying this, but I'll say it in Game 3 and Game 4's recap on the next Blue Jays game recap following the final of Wednesday's game. But I think this is the sign of you've got to attack and you've got to keep Baltimore where they are. Now, Baltimore fans, that may seem like a little bit of a threat, but the Blue Jays and the Orioles know this all too well. It's tough to win in this league, especially in 162 games of a season, but you're fighting for something. And right now, knowing you're the only game that's gone final, but you're playing 2, and the other half of the American League has not played yet, or even the National League, you're quite in trouble if you don't pick up wins. And I hate to say it, but you might as well just split this series in 2. Take 2 out of 4 for the Orioles, 2 out of 4 for the Blue Jays. Will that happen? I certainly don't know, and I don't know if you guys know. Let us know what you guys think. Time for our final timeout. That's my thoughts on the series. Let me know what you guys think. We will finish off Blue Jays game recap double dose game 1, game 2 of a 4-game series with my final thoughts and my final tally line of what would usually be the American League standings update, but will be just a series preview for game 3 of this 4-game series, game 2 of this doubleheader Tuesday. And we will look at the action from the 11-4 Orioles win over the Blue Jays just to see where the American League East teams were at on Monday last night when everything settled before we get ready for Tuesday. And that's all in 30 seconds on our final timeout for Blue Jay game recap double dose. Game 1, game 2 have been broken down. Another double dose is coming your way amidst the final score of Wednesday's game. find out the timing of those first pitches next. Back in 30 seconds on the ice and behind the benches and words on Sports for Beginners from 1 minute and 30 seconds to wrap up this show. Blue Jays are down 2-0 in a 4-game series set against the Orioles. The Battle of the Birds series, doubleheader, final nightcap, and third game of a 4-game series, originally 3-game series, comes your way next.
Looking for a sports podcast that covers sports weekly as well as gets you set up for the day? Check out Weekly in Sports with me, Scott McGregor. We give some shout-outs of the week to podcasts like this one and those who do them. Discuss the Blue Jays, Bills, Raptors, and more. To learn more, check out the Sports for Beginners Facebook page. Search Sports for Beginners.
Blue Jays Orioles final game of the doubleheader is getting set to go. It's Young versus Lauer in the third game of this 4-game series. Originally a 3-game series. My name is Thomas McGregor. This is Blue Jays game recap. And Blue Jay fans, obviously not what we expected from the Blue Jays in the first of this doubleheader. Will we get better tonight? Maybe, maybe not. We're just an hour, 2 minutes away from first pitch getting thrown out in game 2 of this doubleheader. And the lineups are out for game 3 of this 4-game series, game 2 of this doubleheader. Let's reveal the lineups right now, as the Baltimore Orioles lineup is not out yet, but I'm sure it'll be out soon. John Schneider will line things up like this. They will indeed not play George Springer. As it stands right now, we will not play George Springer. So the lineup will look like this. And we'll share our screen here so you can see. It will be Nathan Lukes will go to left field. So he will be back in this ball game. He will play at left. Bo Bichette will be the designated hitter. At first base, we'll have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Addison Barger will be in right field. Davis Schneider will play second base. Will Wagner will be in the ball game at third base. Your shortstop will be Ernie Clement. Miles Straw will be in center field. And Tyler Heidemann will play in at catcher for Eric Lauer. So that is your lineup for the Blue Jays going into the doubleheader. Heidemann at catcher. Straw in center field alongside Nathan Lukes and Addison Barger, who are in left and right field. Your infield with Tyler Heidemann consists of Bo Bichette being the designated hitter. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will be at first. Ernie is at short. Second base is Davis Schneider. Will Wagner is at third base. And this just coming in from Blake Murphy. We have had some Blue Jay DFA'd. We have DFA'd Chad Green. So we have designated Chad Green for an assignment. For it looks like we're making room for someone called last name Dominguez. I don't know who the first name is. It looks like we're making room for some people. It is getting a game and a half away from the trade deadline, which is this Thursday evening. So Dominguez is with the Blue Jays right now, and Chad Green is DFA'd as of right now for the Blue Jays. That news just coming in courtesy of Blake Murphy ahead of this game. A reminder to viewers that you can find game 2 of this 3-game series. I should say 4-game series known as a doubleheader for Tuesday night. You can catch the game on Orioles MASN or the MASN Plus app. It is on Sportsnet for the Blue Jay fans out there and TVA Sports. You can hear it on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and the Sportsnet app. Or you can hear it on 98 Rock for Baltimore Orioles fans, 97.9 FM, WBAL, or 190 AM. 190 AM. That is your Baltimore Orioles radio stations for this ball game and the ball game that just played out at Camden Yards. All right, everybody, we are getting into that wire point where we figure out when we are just minutes away from first pitch. The Blue Jays and the Orioles will wrap up this series tomorrow with Tony Mansolino and John Schneider getting ready for their 4th and final game of this series at 12:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:35 a.m. Central Time, 10:35 a.m. Mountain Time, 9:35 a.m. Pacific, 5:35 p.m. London Time, and 6:35 p.m. Paris Time. If you are in either of those areas and are trying to find the game or wait till it is over internationally, I'm told on the MLB app, as you probably have downloaded the app if it's available in your area, that all games today are free games of the day to watch. And I believe that has something to do with the MLB trade deadline this Thursday. But we'll talk about the trade deadline, I'm sure, as we proceed to the day, which is when we talk to you Wednesday and wrap up this series, going to be known as tomorrow. But for now, since tomorrow is Wednesday, it is just a Thursday. The deadline, of course, will be at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 6 o'clock at the earliest on the East Coast is when the deadline gets going. And the Blue Jays just made something official here just before I get into the final thoughts of Game 1 and Game 2 of the 4-game series set, originally a 3-game series, but because of the makeup game, which ended up being the second game of a 4-game series, first of a doubleheader today, it is without question that the Blue Jays have indeed acquired right-handed pitcher from the opponent, the Baltimore Orioles, Dominguez, Dominguez. I don't know how to say this first name, but I'm going to try to say it. Sir Anthony Dominguez. I hope I'm saying that right. Sir Anthony Dominguez. I hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not saying that right, I'll just go with S. Dominguez, as he has been acquired from the Blue Jays from the Baltimore Orioles and is reportedly active for tonight's second of the doubleheader, third of a 4-game series. 2 games in the books for the Blue Jays and the Baltimore Orioles. The Battle of the Birds series ends on Wednesday, on the eve of the trade deadline when we are recording. But of course, it's an afternoon start at 12:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:35 a.m. Central, 10:35 a.m. Mountain, 9:35 a.m. Pacific, 5:35 p.m. London, UK, and 6:35 p.m. Paris, UK. Paris, France. Okay, everybody. 2 games on the books. 2 games left to go. Let's dive into our attendance records, and then very briefly before I sign off, we'll talk about the series in a nutshell. But before we do that, here is a look at the AL East records as per Monday, with the Tampa Bay Rays and the New York Yankees continuing their 4-game series, which I believe will wrap up very soon. The Blue Jays see the Yankees now currently heading into today's game 57-49. The Rays are currently 54-53. They picked up a victory against the New York Yankees 4-2. The Boston Red Sox picked up a loss against the Minnesota Twins. That series, I believe, is ongoing and will be the series before the trade deadline for the Boston Red Sox. That, of course, will be a good one to keep an eye on. Their record 57-51 right now. And speaking of them, they will be in action again against their team that they're facing, the Twins, at 7:40 p.m. Eastern Time. The Yankees continue their series with the Rays, and that, of course, is Max Fried on the hill for the Tampa Bay Rays. It is Joe Boyle. He'll get the start. His record is currently 1-0. He'll look to be undefeated and go to 2-0. Max Fried's record 11-4 right now. He'll look to go to 12-4 with a victory against the Rays later tonight at 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:05 p.m. Central Time, 5:05 p.m. Mountain Time, 4:05 p.m. Pacific. Max Fried on the hill. The Tigers currently at 62-46. They'll face a 51-56 Arizona Diamondbacks at 6:40 p.m. Eastern Time. So that's going to get going very, very soon as we are approaching the 6 o'clock hour. It is currently 5:47 p.m. Eastern, which means it is currently on the Central 4:47 p.m. East Central. It is 4:47 p.m. Central, as it is 5:47 p.m. Eastern right now. All right, so that's about the American League East right now. Remember, the Orioles are the last team. They are the last place team. They're taking on the first place Toronto Blue Jays. The Yankees are taking on the Tampa Bay Rays right now, and the Red Sox, well, they're just taking on the Minnesota Twins as of right now. The trade deadline is Thursday. And before that, all of these series, of course, will wrap up. Most of them, if they are 4 games, they'll probably wrap up on the day of the deadline, which is the Thursday, July 31st. It is Tuesday, July 29th. And tomorrow is July 30th, Wednesday. So we'll have it for you. We'll have the 4-game and 3rd game recap for you next time on Blue Jays Game Recap, following the 12:35 finish. A reminder of who that finish line will be. It won't be Lauer and Young. It'll be Jose Barrios and Dean Kay with the start. First pitch, 12:05 p.m. Eastern Time, 12:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:35 a.m. Central Time, 10:35 a.m. Mountain Time, and 9:30 a.m. Pacific. 9:35 a.m. Pacific. That will be the nuts and bolts there. So far, it's been a good series. Blue Jays scoring runs, only 4 to be exact. I think they'll have a shot in tonight's nightcap, but I'm not going to guarantee that the Blue Jays will take Game 3 of this 4-game series. I hope they do, Blue Jays fans, and I know you guys do. But the Orioles seem to be the ones who are in the driver's seat right now. And I said this on the Tigers series, and I'll say it on this series. Already it's been 2 games. Orioles, Blue Jays are with nobody. But the series is still up for grabs. And with a doubleheader ending at 6:35, and who knows when this game will go final, it is pretty good to know that we'll have both games talked about on the next Blue Jays Game Recap. That's it for us, everybody, on Blue Jays Game Recap, as we are just about minutes, and I mean minutes away from first pitch. We are just 44 minutes and 9 seconds away from first pitch with Eric Lauer and, of course, Brendan Young taking the hill. So just before we sign off here, let's see, do we have the lineup from Tony? I think we should have the lineup by now from Tony. Do we indeed have the lineup? Is the question. The Blue Jays lose the first 2 games of a 4-game series to the Baltimore Orioles, 16-4 and 11-4. The April game is 16-4. That wraps up that 3-game series. Now it's time to wrap up game series against, well, the Orioles and the Blue Jays, as this is game 2 of the July 3-game series, known as a 4-game series. Lauer and Young. Who comes out victorious in the second of a doubleheader, third of a 4-game series. I don't know. All I can tell you is that in the night of which the Orioles and the Blue Jays have seen the Orioles take down the Blue Jays, in night one, 11-4, the Orioles beat the Blue Jays in front of an attendance record of 20,176. That's 20,176 fans in attendance. And in game two, earlier this afternoon, your attendance record for a 16-4 victory with Tyler O'Neill, the player of the game, Gunnar Henderson, and R. Urias with Jordan Westbrook, who are 4 for 6, 3 for 4 is Gunnar Henderson and R.U. Tyler O'Neill, 2 for 3, the player of the game. Player of the fan perspective is attendance record 16,194 fans in attendance for this game. What will be the attendance records of game 2? What will be the attendance records of game 2 of this doubleheader, game 3 of this 4-game series, and game 4 of this 4-game series? Wednesday, find out amidst the final game next time on Blue Jays Game Recap, as we prepare to get you ready for the Blue Jays and Royals after the trade deadline. And the Orioles, well, their sights will be set on when they hit the trade deadline break. 3 against Chicago on the road and 3 against Philly before they hit back home for a 6-game homestand against the Athletics and the Seattle Mariners. My name is Thomas McGregor. Thank you so much for joining us, Blue Jays fans, Baltimore Orioles fans. May the best team win in the second of a doubleheader. And as always, for all the Blue Jay fans out there and baseball fans in general, lights up, let's go. See you after game 4 and 3 of this 4-game series Wednesday afternoon. Lauer, Young, 4 games. This is game number 3. And they throw first pitch. Coming up in just a matter of minutes, we will talk to you after game 3 and 4 finish. Have yourselves a great evening.
Thank you so much for listening to Sports for Beginners. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can visit the podcast Facebook page or visit the official website. You can also send us an email at sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com. As we always remind you, it is not goodbye, it is until next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the On the Ice and Behind the Benches post-game show on the Sports for Beginners podcast feed. Remember, everybody on the Ice and Behind the Benches, to join Thomas every Tuesday for weekly episodes of your favorite ice content, from the drop of the puck to hitting the showers. We thank you for joining us.
Hey Blue Jays fans, a Blue Jays game recap for Sports for Beginners. It is your host of On the Ice and Behind the Benches, the podcast, Thomas McGregor here. While it may have come to an end on Sports for Beginners, I highly encourage you to stay tuned for further updates on Sports for Beginners as they are taking a new path. But don't be afraid to join me during the next road series as Blue Jays game recap continues on the ice and behind the benches. From all of us at Sports for Beginners who put Blue Jays game recap into play, thank you very much for joining us and listening to the show. If you'd like to see it again, please let our host of Sports for Beginners know, and have yourselves a great All-Star weekend and a great second half. See you then.